You're listening to Kill Cliff's Hazard Ground podcast, with service members from across the military sharing their stories of combat and survival. And now, here's your host, Mark Zinno.
Welcome into the Hazard Ground podcast. As always, we appreciate you joining us each and every week. Before we get to this week's episode, who features a man who spent nearly 30 years as a Navy SEAL and has gone on to do some great things in his post-military career, including a fondness for whiskey. I am excited to hear about all of that. But I hope you guys have recovered from last week. I know I have. It was a little bit of an emotional episode. I'm glad that I've got such positive feedback from it, and I certainly appreciate all the notes that you guys have sent along, whether it's on our YouTube channel, on Apple reviews, or just dropped into the DM on Hazard Ground's Instagram, my Instagram, whatever it may be. I certainly appreciate a lot of you reaching out, and continue to go back and look at last week's episode. I think you'll value it if you missed it. But before we get to our guest this week, our normal reminders: follow us on all the social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Hazard Ground Podcast. Of course, don't forget about our promotion with Amazon. You can go to our website, hazardground.com. You click on the Amazon button at the bottom of the homepage or under the sponsors tab, and all you got to do is it'll redirect you right to Amazon. You do all your normal Amazon shopping. We'll get a percentage of what you guys spend, and then we will donate a percentage of that back to some of the charities and organizations you've heard featured here on the Hazard Ground. So again, hazardground.com, hit the Amazon button, works right from your smartphone too, redirects you to the app. All your credit card information is saved. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. As I mentioned a moment ago, you can watch all of our Hazard Ground episodes there, and download the JUL-TV app, because all of our episodes are there through Kill Cliff and Kill Cliff TV. Don't forget about our friends at Kill Cliff and KillCliff.com. Clean energy drinks benefits the Navy SEAL Foundation. I know our guest is going to be very, very happy about that. But some of the best clean energy drinks out there, guys. I mean, Kill Cliff just makes superior products. Check them out at KillCliff.com. Order all of your Kill Cliff. All right. And Apple reviews, please continue. Leave those Apple reviews. We're getting better. I keep getting notifications that we're moving up on the Apple podcast chart. So we need your help. 5 stars. Tell us why you love the show. All right, this week's guest, as I mentioned a moment ago, spent 31 years in the U.S. Navy, 28 of that inside the Navy SEALs and inside Naval Special Warfare. He was enlisted for 15 years first before converting to officer, where he retired as a lieutenant commander. And he is now the president of JUL-TV, which is about to debut a Veterans in Transition series. We'll get to that. He is also the ambassador of a foundation or organization he started himself called Warriors and Whiskey. He is Tim Fedrick, joining us here on the Hazard Ground. Tim, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet everyone virtually. Let me correct one thing real quick with Tom Julian of JUL-TV. He is the president. I'm one of his executive producers. I'm the host for the JUL-TV television series, but Tom Julian is the president.
All right. Well, what you guys are doing there is fantastic. And as you told me before we started recording, a 10-part series coming out later this fall. We'll get into all of that coming up here. And I know that you are, we're going to talk some whiskey here, which I'm definitely excited about. Brown liquor is you may as well just tap a line in my veins here. We'll just say that much. I love to partake in a lot of whiskey and bourbon. So we'll get to that, Warriors and whiskey. But 31 years, an amazingly long time within the United States Navy. Obviously, your career started way before the 9/11 world. So how and why did you sign up?
Well, that's a funny story. Some of my buddies probably get on to me about this. I was in high school in 1990 and in Seymour, Tennessee. And at that point, I had several small colleges offering me a baseball scholarship. So I fully intended on going to one of those small colleges and playing baseball. And in the summer of 90 is when I graduated high school, and I saw the movie with Charlie Sheen, Michael Biehn, Navy SEALs. And I'm like, and that's really the first time I heard about anything about the SEALs. So I saw it. I thought it was very cool. I was already on delayed entry at that point, or I was enrolled, whether I joined the service or not, was still up in the air and a lot dependent on those baseball scholarships. But that convinced me that it was absolutely the right thing to do. And what better job can you have doing something different every day, shooting weapons, jumping, whether it be static line, free fall, going to sniper school and so forth. So once I saw that movie, my mind was made up, and I joined the military in September of 1990.
Anybody try to talk you out of it?
Oh, my buddies that were going to some of those colleges that I was looking at for baseball definitely had my ear, but my mind was made up, and I figured I would do college a little bit later anyway.
What did your parents say when you were going to forego this baseball scholarship to go in the Navy?
Well, my dad, he was in the Army and then later the National Guard. But my mom, she was happy with whatever I decided that I wanted to do. So I didn't have much kickback with what I was choosing to do in my career. So that was pretty much easy day. They were both supportive. My dad, if anything, he was probably wondering why Navy, why not go Army. But other than that, not a big deal.
So when you got in, I mean, obviously you knew you wanted to be a Navy SEAL. Were they handing out Navy SEAL contracts back then?
No, and I kind of messed up because I didn't come in. They had the DIFAR program back then, and you come in under a 6-year commitment, and I didn't do that. And my recruiter and they were kind of all over the place and trying to get people to join. And at the time, I didn't really know what to believe. So I didn't come in under the DIFAR program. And from 90 to 94, that's partly why I ended up in the fleet. The fleet turned out to be very good for me, but I was on the USS Arleigh Burke. It was a pre-commissioned, so I was a plank owner of that. And in hindsight, I wouldn't trade that tour for anything. It definitely prepared me to work with the fleet once I got into Naval Special Warfare better, whether we were on ships, and at times we were because we had ARG Alphas and ARG Bravos with the amphibious readiness groups back then. So it turned out to be really good to do that fleet time, get my ESWAS, went to SAR school, went to SEER school up in Maine in the winter. And so I did everything I could. The ship was real good to me with allowing me to prepare for BUDS. They knew that was what I wanted to do. And in 94, I was off the BUDS, class 199.
You know, I've had 20 plus years in the military. And every time I hear somebody say that they went to SEER school, I always say that's the one school that I would go to over any other one if I ever had the opportunity. That's the school like I really, really wanted to go to. I was never given the opportunity. And as soon as I heard about it from a couple of Green Berets that I deployed with, I'm like, that's cool. I want to try that. I don't know why I want to try it. But was it the same back then? Because kind of the idea of POWs changed in the post 9/11 world.
Well, I mean, they definitely have advanced courses now, and I have a pretty in-depth personnel recovery background. So when I went to the one in Maine, it was Phase O Training Group Lant up in Brunswick, Maine. You also had one for the Navy out in San Diego, and then the Army has their courses, Air Force has theirs,
Gotcha.
Marines go to theirs. So everybody's course, I guess, is set up a little bit different. But survival, evasion, resistance, escape is the acronym, and you go through different phases over that 11 to 14-day period. Some are longer, some courses longer, some shorter. But I can't say it's any different now. You just have specialized courses that add to that level C course, and that's what our 11-day, 13-day SEER training course is. It qualifies you for a level C. You can do level B online and so forth.
So you're off to BUDS now. I wouldn't call that movie research that you did for BUDS, but was there any other research that you did to kind of know what you were walking into, or you were comfortable with just going into it fairly blind?
No, I didn't do much research on it. I probably should have, but it turned out to be a great pairing for me. So in hindsight, I wish I would have researched it a little bit better. I wish I would have researched the DIFAR program, which ended soon after I came in. So no one would have that option nowadays to go into that program. It's a much better process in preparing people for BUDS that they have now. than when they did back then. And then again, if anything, I wouldn't have went to the fleet. But I have to say, I took a lot of value and moving forward with how we interacted with the ship's crew, the sub's crew, and did business. And some of our guys that didn't have that fleet experience, I think it was very helpful to them. So in hindsight, other than not going to the fleet and going to straight to buds, that's the only thing that research would have done. So I knew I wasn't going to quit. I knew I didn't want to go back to the fleet, even though I mentioned I had a very good time there. I learned a lot. It just wasn't for me to do for a 20-year plus career, where in NSW it was.
More difficult part of buds for you, the physical challenges or the mental challenges?
Oh, definitely mental. I would say to anybody, if someone wants to go to buds, if you can do the screening test to get in, as long as you don't quit, you're good to go. You just have to adjust as the course moves along. The physical training gets more intense, but if you can do that test to get in and to start buds, then you can finish buds. It's as basic as it gets in the teams. That's why they call it basic underwater demolition SEAL training. So for me, the most difficult part, I showed up in September, didn't form up to the beginning of January, is that cold water. If anybody's ever been in the water, and especially in the winter in San Diego, even though it's a great climate to live in, that water gets pretty chilly. And I guess in hindsight, I would have much rather have gone through in the summer. The cold water was the most difficult part for me. That can make you, it's pretty painful, and that can mess with you mentally, especially when the sun goes down. And you got several nights where the sun's down that during Hell Week, where you got to deal with it. Push through it. Don't quit. Never quit.
I always ask this of guys who went through buds, because I think the sort of mental dynamic, not even the mental challenge, I just mean the mental dynamic of watching everybody else go through it with you, is always, like a study for me in psychology. But I'm sure there were guys around you that when you first got in, you looked at it and said, there's no way that guy's quitting. This is going to be easy for him. And you watched him run up there and ring the bell, and your jaw hit the floor. And then conversely, you looked at other guys and went, there's no way this kid's going to survive this thing. And next thing you know, he's the superstar stud that everybody's following. I mean, was there stuff like that going on when you went through buds?
Well, I learned, if I didn't learn it in high school and learn it from my family and upbringing, I learned to never judge a book by its cover.
Right.
And in SAR school, same thing happened. I went to SAR school in Jacksonville on the surface side, because you have an air side as well in the Navy. But I went to the surface SAR swimmer school in Jacksonville. And there was several people, and just looking around, watching them PT, watching them do the scenarios that they put us through. And there was some people I felt would definitely make it through, and they didn't. And there was some people that were struggling every step of the way that could have ended up leaving the course at any point. They made it through. Same thing in buds. There's some people that can do everything, for example, better than me. They can run better. They can swim faster. They can run further. They can do the O course way faster. They can shoot better. But some of those guys are not used to being challenged either. And it's one thing, if nothing else, that I try not to do, as easy as it is sometimes, is to judge someone by what you see. And especially until you get to know that person.
Was there anybody who you kind of latched onto at buds that was like the one person who maybe emotionally helped you get through it when you were just sitting there contemplating, why did I choose this? There must be an easier way. Was there somebody that was there with you the whole way?
Well, you definitely, we ended up graduating in 199, and this includes our rollback of 29 people. You definitely rely on your swim buddy. And then in the early days of buds, you go through a number of swim buddies, especially in Hell Week, especially, at least in my mind, in the winter with that cold water. You would turn around and your swim buddy would be gone. You'd get another swim buddy. But so I went through a number of swim buddies. But if there is somebody that you rely on, and you do forge some close relationships throughout BUDS, and I still talk to some of my BUDS mates today. There's a couple that are still in, believe it or not, but so swim buddy without a doubt, and then over time, especially after BUDS, you start to build those lasting relationships, and at the end of the day, all you got is when you leave the service, your number's up. You got your family and your close friends and your close teammates, which are your close friends. So definitely they help. My swim buddy helped, and I just went through a number of them. So.
All right. So you graduate BUDS circa 94, early 95?
Mid 95, June
Okay.
95, I went to airborne course down at Fort Benning, and then back to SEAL Team 3.
All right. So it's mid 95. Gulf War's in the rearview mirror, Black Hawk Down's in the rearview mirror, and everybody's happy in the world. Gee, without kind of, it's hard to gloss over 6 years, but and clearly there are real world missions you guys were conducting. We know that now. We didn't know that back then, or at least we were just in the dark, pun intended, on what SEALs did back then. What's the operational tempo like prior to 9/11 for you?
Well, I did 3 platoons at SEAL Team 3. It was Bravo platoon back to back to back. The first one was an Org Alpha, and that was another benefit of the fleet time. I was a radioman in the fleet, and the platoon that just returned from their deployment that was about to start their workup needed a radioman. And we were an Org Alpha that was going to be signed to the USS Essex battle, or Org Alpha. And we were on the Cleveland. Our leadership was on the Essex. And I was supposed to, and I was lined up to do STT, SEAL Tactical Training at the time. Now it's called SQT. But since they were starting their work up, they needed a fleet-trained radioman, or they wanted that anyway. They heard that I just showed up from the fleet and was there and available. So I went straight into a platoon, straight into a workup. When my friends, they were all out camp guarding and doing other things that new guys do until you get tried in. Back then, we also had a probation period to where you were on probation for a minimum of 6 months, going through all of your PQS, your personal quals, and then you get boarded before you earn your tried in. Some guys go through that within their 6 months. So there's a few guys that throughout that probation period, it just don't work out for them, and they end up leaving the community for one reason or another. So that probation period back then, it could be a little intense. And but I went straight into the Org Alpha. We did our 1.5 year workup, and then we did, I think it turned out to be 7 months with the Org Alpha, and in our case, 11th Mute.
This whole experience, when you get through this first sort of run with the platoon, does it sort of live up to what you expected, what you saw in that movie years ago, and everything, like, okay, I'm here, this is what I wanted, this is what I was hoping to do? Does it feel that way?
Some of the workup, especially when you get into the advanced training, because most of the CQC and urban warfare that you would see, the MOUT training that or the MOUT operations that you would see in that movie, definitely resonated with me. And that, other than that, no, a lot of the workup did not. But some of the things on the deployment started to. Right. But definitely the CQC and the advanced training, pretty much everything that's under that advanced training umbrella did resonate, and I did have that to fall back on. But.
All right. So again, fast forwarding a little bit here, because 30 years is hard to span without sitting here and talking for 30 hours. Where are you on 9/11?
I had just got through with SEAL Delivery Vehicle, the pilot and navigator course down in Panama City, and reported to SDV Team 2 in Little Creek, Virginia. That command is back now, if people are listening, because for a while there they decommissioned it, but it is back and up and running again, and it has been for a couple years now. But I showed up there, and I was going through Chief Select training, and that's about a month and a half long process, where you go from E6 to Chief Petty Officer. And we were going through various drills and scenarios, to be honest with you. And the cadre that was putting us through that learning experience, I'll call it, they stepped out of the room and they came back into the room, and they told us basically just to leave base. We kind of thought they were messing with us, to be honest with you. But they told us to leave the base, get off the base as soon as you can. Definitely check in with your command, because we were all working at Naval Special Warfare Group 2, which is the ISIC, or it's the Echelon 3 command for all the SEAL teams on the East Coast. So we were assigned to Group 2 at that point. We got off the base. He told us to turn on the TV, and then we saw the towers coming down in a lot of cases, at least I did. And so a new world in the military
right
after 9/11.
Did you think that you guys were immediately going to be pressed into action?
Without a doubt. We didn't know which teams, and at that time, everything was so dynamic and moving at such a quick pace. It didn't take long for personnel to get into theater, whether that be into Iraq or whether it be definitely into Afghanistan.
What is your first taste of the war on terror? Where do you go? When do you get there?
Well, we would fly commercial a good bit, so obviously flying commercial changed, at least in the near term, right after 9/11 happened, changed big time. But I was on SR, Special Reconnaissance Training, and I was the chief working for another senior chief in getting the Special Reconnaissance guys, because you had the SDV side and you had the SR side at SDV-2. The SDV side drove and navigated the boat and worked as mission specialists out of the back of the boat. And the SR side, we did over the beach sniper work. So the majority, if not all, of the personnel that was on the SR side was either snipers or they were soon to go to sniper school. So at that point, I was not a sniper yet. And I was a chief of training department in training up the task units to deploy overseas for the SR side. And I did that for about 4 months. And then he's a mentor of mine, the guy I was working for, the senior chief, he got called back over to Kosovo. So I stepped right into the LCPO role for a brief time period of SR training, and did that pretty much until I rolled into a task unit myself. So at first, training our guys to deploy is what I did for the first year and a half or a year until I got into a task unit myself, and they were training me.
Was that disappointing for you?
No, because we needed to train, and at this point, we had some deployments scheduled, and there was only, and there is still only 2 SEAL delivery vehicle teams, one out in Hawaii and one in Virginia Beach. So we had our mission set, and some of our guys did go into Afghanistan. Some did support missions off of or in Iraq. But that was my role at the time. It was getting personnel ready to deploy wherever they ended up deploying to. And so I accepted that role. I learned a lot, and went to sniper school once I was relieved as the LCPO, and then I joined my task unit. And then we deployed and did some great things on the SDV side of things off of Eastern Africa.
Okay, so when do you get to Iraq first or Afghanistan first?
Well, I did my work with SDV, in short, Iraq first. Okay. But my work with SDV was off of Eastern Africa.
Right.
And obviously I did the workup to get me ready for that. And we did some great things in that area or in that region.
I mean, to this point, before, between Africa and everything you did prior to 9/11, have you had a actual combat experience to this point yet?
While I was at SDV, no.
Okay.
The closest I came to that was Yemen. We were the first ones to go into Yemen, I want to say, in quite a while. I think it was like 10 to 12 years. There was an ODA, I can't remember what group they came from, that was there ahead of us. But for a while, we didn't get into Yemen. And I want to say it was either 98 or 99. We were working in, initially I was working out of Sanaa, which is where our embassy is, and then later Hudaydah. And some of our fellows were working down in Aden. And speaking of that, one of my ops officer that was on the Arleigh Burke with me, his ship, the Cole, was off of Aden. A couple of months after I left Yemen, the Cole got hit down in Aden, and our sister platoon helped them out with that. So, even though Yemen was not as hot, so to speak, as it is today, or 4 years ago, there was a lot of bad things going on in and around the ports there, especially between Hudaydah and Aden. And then that happened. I happened to be in Jordan when that happened, and I got that word. And that was a shame because I'll just say that commander would have went a lot further in his naval career unless he would have chosen to get out. So I was very sad to see that, but it happened. And that happened while I was in Jordan, only a couple months after I left Yemen. So that would be a better timeline to go off of instead of 98, 99.
Sure, makes sense. You get to Iraq when?
I went to Iraq for the first time as soon as I got out of Knife and Fork. I went to, we had a LDO and CWO program. It's Limited Duty Officer, Chief Warrant Officer program. That's how I was commissioned. I went from Senior Chief Petty Officer, E8 to 01E. I didn't account for that initial pay cut that you don't usually take a pay cut, but I sure did because I missed my safe pay by a couple of cents. And then I was pretty junior as a 13-year senior chief too. So at the end of the day, I definitely took a pay cut until I made 02E. But so I went to Knife and Fork School. It's what we refer to it as. People probably get mad at that when they hear that. Some people anyway. But they prepare you to be an officer. They going from enlisted to officer. They teach you the ropes, and a lot of value out of that school. I learned a lot. And so I did that. And as soon as I graduated from that course, SEAL Team 1 is where I reported to. They were in Iraq. Instead of staying on beach deck, they asked that I come over. I was going to be the training officer or the CSO, the Combat Systems Officer, when I got to Team 1 after we returned from deployment. So I finished that 4 months. I think it was 4.5 by the time it was all said and done. And we came back to Coronado, but that was the first time in Iraq, and I actually had it really good over there.
What year was that?
That was 06.
Okay.
It was 06. I got commissioned in January, went to the LDO CWO course in Pensacola. It was the last courses to be in Pensacola that year before they moved up to Rhode Island. But that was 06. By the time I got over there, it was late February, early March. And I think we got back in June, July. I was one of the last to get back.
We were there at the exact same time.
What's that?
We were there at the exact same time in Iraq. If you were in Baghdad, we were there with you. If you were at the Navy SEAL compound, I was right next door.
Well, you have out near the airport where we had some of our people, but
yes.
But I was at RPC.
That's where I was.
The Army took RPC.
Yep.
During that deployment, we ended up moving out to Fallujah.
Yeah.
That was me. I was.
That's funny. Like literally, we might have sat in the same meeting at some point in time.
Wouldn't doubt it. But RPC had a pool right outside of my room.
Yep, that's the one. I was in that pool.
Yeah.
I swam in the Navy SEAL pool. I more stayed on the Army side, but every now and then I got invited over to hang out with the SEAL guys and on your side of RPC behind that big metal gate, double door that shut you guys off from the world.
And then go up to Falcon Palace.
Falcon, that was our DFAC.
Yeah.
We were there at the exact same time. Crazy small world. Crazy small world. I got to tell you, I want to back up real quick. I want to find out if we know the same guy. But I wanted to ask why you had made the switch to officer. Like, what was the real impetus for it? I mean, did you feel like you tapped out on the enlisted side?
No, absolutely not. I really enjoyed my enlisted time. And I had a good career, both. My whole career, it was a great career. If I had it to do over again, would I've chosen to go officer? I don't know. I debate that with myself all the time because I flew through the ranks up to E8. I feel like I would have been a very young Master Chief. I had my Dolphins for all of the time that we did those ops off of Eastern Africa with the sub. Had my ESWAS. I had my FMF. At the time, it was a ribbon from working with 11th MEU with all we did from them. So SEAL, ESWAS qualified, submarine qualified, FMF qualified. I was set up pretty good to continue my career enlisted-wise, make 9, and then do all of the billets that you would want to do as a SEAL Master Chief Petty Officer.
Okay.
So there was several things that drove me to go the officer route, and so that's what I ended up doing. And I just not sure if I would do it all again. I don't know if I would have stayed enlisted.
Welcome to the dark side. What can I tell you? I mean, we're a peculiar bunch as officers. It's a different world. That said, I won't ever remember his name, but I can remember exactly what he looks like. And if I describe it, he had like blonde hair, and his face looked like it was carved out of a modeling magazine. He was the only Navy SEAL I would ever see in these meetings. He was about like maybe stocky guy, like 5'9", maybe 5'10". I'll have to go. I think I got a picture somewhere. I have to go find his name. But he was the only Navy SEAL that ever came to our meetings at RPC when we had him up at the big palace on the hill. He was the only one who ever came there from an operations standpoint. We had a couple, and I remember that movement to Fallujah because I was actually asked to do a lot of convoys out there. I was in charge of the ISOF, one of the battalions in the ISOF brigade, and so we had a bunch of supplies that needed to be moved out there to the Fallujah area. But nonetheless, he was the one guy I remember. And the only reason I think anybody remember him because he was just like, if you were to draw a Navy SEAL and put him in a magazine, that's the dude you'd pick.
I'm I'm drawing a blank on who
that's
that
okay.
could have been. Me and this other ensign and I'll leave his
He was
name.
in 03 at the time. That I do remember. He was in 03.
Okay. I have an idea who it was, but I was in getting prepared for when we returned, this other ensign and I, and then we knew all of the different platoons and task units or troops, whatever you want to call them, that was at all the OWL stations. So between Baghdad, between Fallujah, Habbaniyah, and Ramadi, we were always as ensigns flying around, and we were both ex-enlisted, so both right around 15, 16 years. So we knew a lot of people in the teams. And it actually couldn't have been better for us because depending on what operations were going in all of those different areas, then that's where we would be.
Right.
So if there was some key events going on, then we would get on our helos and schedule the helos, go out to Ramadi, go on a couple of walks with the people there, and then same thing with Fallujah. And we stayed busy that way. So being in around RPC, and definitely after we got everything to be built out in Fallujah and that open field that they gave us, or open area of the desert, that's what we did. So I missed out on a lot of the little things that happened when that camp was being set up. But we had it pretty good. It's about as good as two ensigns can have it, whether they used to be enlisted or not. And learned a lot, got a lot of good ops in, especially in that Fallujah, Karma area. Dangerous area at that time.
Yeah.
But learned a lot and wouldn't trade that time for anything.
Is this where you have your actual first combat experience in the War on Terror?
Yes.
Yeah.
For me, yes. Is in 06 in all of those different areas.
Now, you had 15 years enlisted and done a variety of different things, both in an instructor role and sort of an operational role and everything else. After that first combat experience, is something, does it feel different? Does it seem different, or was it just another day for you?
No, our training pipeline got us pretty prepared for what we expected. And it's a dynamic environment. every situation's different. Things can go astray in combat at any point. And then you just fall back on your training, you react, and you do everything possible to bring your people home.
How many more deployments do you go through after that first one between Iraq and Afghanistan?
Once SEAL Team 1, we got back from that deployment, went right into our workup for another Iraq deployment, deployed again in September of 2007, returned May of 2008. And in that time, I was primarily working out of Haditha and Al-Assad. So I was between those two. First 3 months, heavy on Haditha, and then toward the end of the deployment, a lot of Al-Assad time. That's where my officer thing went from doing what I was doing as enlisted to, all right, we're going to make you an LNO over here to RCT-5. We're going to make you an LNO over here to the JPEG. There's some relationships that need to be built over there. So that's where I really had a different kind of line of work, going from enlisted and just going from operation to operation to being an officer and getting more in that leadership. That
was that tough for you to sort of be taken out of that, for lack of a better way to phrase it, in the action to on the sidelines?
I wouldn't call it on the sidelines, but
I mean, it's not the sidelines, but I just, there's a much more operational tone to what you do on the enlisted side than the planning and meetings and leadership stuff you have to do on the officer side.
Without a doubt. I mean, that's our snipers, that's our breachers, that's our that's our dive supervisors, that's our jump masters. So the enlisted side, it's hands-on. You're the actual door kickers, trigger pullers, whatever you want to refer to them as. Mm-hmm. So it is night and day because you go into a not necessarily more of a leadership role, because that's definitely throughout the enlisted ranks and senior enlisted, definitely from the LPO on up. But leading petty officer for LPO. But I expected it, and that's part of your training process, going from enlisted to officer, regardless of what pay grade you do that transition at. So it's expected. It's just watching your fellas and your teammates go out and then come back. It's just a whole different world, and it's just something that once you make that switch, you should expect it, and then it definitely happens. So that was kind of hard.
All right, so we've moved forward into 2008. Do you leave? When do you leave SEAL Team 1? Do you leave SEAL Team 1, and what's next?
I leave SEAL Team 1 and go to Special Boat Team 22 down in Stennis, Mississippi, on the Stennis Space Center. So I had the SEAL teams at 3 and 1. Had the SEAL delivery vehicle teams, SDV2, and so now it's a whole different ball game within the special boat teams, especially down in Mississippi, to where it's the riverine team. You got your two coastal teams on the East Coast, SBT-20, and then on the West Coast, SBT-12. Deal with the open ocean and coastal environment, and then with the riverine environment down in Mississippi. So I grew up down there. Grew up in Louisiana, born in Natchez, Mississippi. That's close to Slidell. That's where I live, but Louisiana will always be home. In Pensacola, it's close enough to home without being in Louisiana, but so that's where I call home now. But I spent almost 5 years there, a little over actually, and from middle of 2008 all the way to pretty much January of 2013. And started out as the training officer in training our riverine troops, getting them ready for deployment. And our riverine troops were doing some great things, by the way, over in Iraq while I was the training officer. So we were preparing the troops that were designated to go over there. Not everybody got to go to Iraq. Some were going down in South America. But that was my job in preparing our troops wherever they ended up deploying to as a training officer.
Tim, you seem like you've had a pretty non-traditional SEAL career, all things considered. I mean, look, I've talked to hundreds of SEALs, and You know, there's the brand of guys who want to spend their entire time in the SEALs on the teams, like you said, kicking down doors, pulling triggers, bringing bad guys to justice kind of deal. And then there are other people who, on the officer side, you know, do their team time, but they understand there's other benchmarks they have to hit and go on. But it just kind of seems you've, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not sure which way you sort of feel about it, leading to the question of what I want to ask, but you've been given a lot of sort of very unique assignments along the way. So is there, regret's not the right word, but it's more one of those things. Do you wish that you have had more of a traditional SEAL career at some point?
No, we discussed the officer enlisted transition,
Right.
but aside from that, no, I wouldn't trade my career for anything. Our boat teams do great things, whether they're in that riverine environment or in the coastal environment. They do great things, and that was good. Some people look at it as a diversity tour, to where some guys will stay in the SEAL teams and go up to the 06 level command echelon 3 and then back to the SEAL teams the majority of their career. And they're perfectly happy with that. That's for them. But with me and going from the SEAL teams and knowing and understanding clearly how the SEAL teams operate, going to a SEAL delivery vehicle team, wouldn't trade that time for anything. And then doing the same thing with the special boat teams, it helps me understand the naval special warfare community better, if nothing else. And I will always, those are a lot of key takeaways to where if I wouldn't have went to those commands, and they do business completely different, then I wouldn't know near as what I know today. And I wouldn't have the memories that I have. And so I'm thankful for my career that I've had. And at this point, I wouldn't even change anything. It is what it is.
So after the boat teams, where are you next?
With the boat teams, I mentioned I did 5 years there.
Right.
And so great tour as a training officer. And then I got asked to stay on there as a Riverine Troop 4 commander. So that's what I did. And, a lot of time down in Colombia. I happened to be the NSW-TE OIC. We had 24 of us. That was a part of the 2012 Cartagena, Colombia period. And some people probably remember that. The Summit of Americas, 2012, Cartagena. But that was one of the first things I did when I got into theater, into Colombia specifically in early 2012.
You mean, just for clarity, Colombia, like South America, not like Colombia, South Carolina. Okay, yeah.
South America, Colombia.
When you first said it, I'm like, okay, water. Colombia sounds like it's near water. And then I'm like, wait a minute. No, the other Colombia.
You'll probably get a lot of call-ins with the Colombia in 2012. When Obama came down to Cartagena, there were some things that happened during that period. But I was the NSW-TE OIC for that. And that was a learning experience in providing maritime security for the president. And so another learning experience and something that you take with you throughout your career and how that whole process plays out and works, and any lessons learned that happen in trips and events such as that one that you just take with you moving forward. So I bring that up, and in 2013, I go back to, once I left Special Boat Team 22, I go back to Group 3. And we skipped Group 3 the first time. I had a brief stint when I got commissioned at Naval Special Warfare Group 3 in Coronado. I later went back, and Group 3 is no longer around as Group 3. It's another group now. But at the time, SDV-1 and SDV-2 fell under Group 3, which moved out to Hawaii in the middle toward the end of 2013. So another big move.
Yeah, I mean, you've been scattered to the wind your entire career. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think of all the places you've been sent. Again, I mean, obviously in the special ops community, yes, that's pretty much par for the course. But I just, comparatively speaking to what I've heard from other guys, you've had quite the go.
Yeah, a lot of very different types of commands, and You definitely learn each stop different ways of doing business, and in some cases different priorities and so forth. But Group 3 is the undersea SMEs throughout all of SOCOM. So,
is there any part of you that is saying to yourself, "Am I ever going to get to Afghanistan?"
that's coming.
I mean, but like, are you thinking it like they've sent you all over the world? Yemen, Colombia, obviously you went to Iraq, but you're on the east coast of Africa. Like, hi, did anybody tell the guys that are in charge that the war is over there?
Yeah. Hey, make no mistake though, undersea, with the areas that the SDV and the mission set can touch, they doing super things. So, again, I wouldn't trade that time for anything, and just amazing work there. And it's completely different than what you'll see at the SEAL teams and the boat teams,
right?
But amazing nonetheless. And I'll leave that one at that. But props out to them, do super work.
All right. So we're down the home stretch here. We're 2013.
Yeah. So I spent working in an operations type capacity and requirements in some cases, and a lot of travel and getting the latest and greatest equipment that our personnel would need in the undersea / maritime environment. Going to a lot of the dive shows and the SHOT Show, for example, and if the equipment was out there, it was better than what we had. One of my roles was working with all the different vendors and so forth and getting that equipment in. And I was kind of just move around and support Group 3, especially since I had already been there as a senior chief petty officer in the past. It come in handy and being able to touch a lot of different areas within the Group 3 headquarters command. And then we had SDV Team 1 that was right down the road with us, to where I spent a lot of time over in their compound, especially early on 2013. But you mentioned Afghanistan a couple of times. While I was at Group 3, toward the end of 2015, I get word that, hey, we need to put your name in a hat for an Afghanistan role. There's each of our Naval Special Warfare Commands have to do the same. They got to provide a name and a qualified body. So do we have your permission to put your name in? They asked that. A good buddy of mine, actually, the operations officer, told me that. And it was going to be a 3-month deployment over to the Afghanistan as the night chops for Sajida Alpha. Started out which was going to start out for me at the Academy compound over there by H. Kaya, if you're familiar with H. Kaya in Kabul, Karzai Airport. And then later go up to Bath, Bagram Airfield. But started out at 3 months. So January 4th, I show up over at Sajida Alpha and night chops, just like we have planned for Sajida Alpha there at the Academy compound. And coming close to my 3-month time period ending, well, that time got pushed out to 6 months. We got pushed out to 9. A lot of details in the middle that we won't cover, but 9. And then by the time I got home, I was over there in Afghanistan, and I learned so much about the country and operations. Sajida Alpha, I mean, they're responsible for all special operations that goes on through Afghanistan. So as the night chops on a nightly basis, I saw everything that was going on over there. A challenging job and a very rewarding job. So I ended up doing that for 5 months. And then when the new leadership came in toward the summer of 2016, I ended up going to RS headquarters, the 4 stars. I was the 2-star at Sajida Alpha's head LNO to the 4-star over at RS headquarters. So I used what I learned there to really help the director of the CJOC, we called it, there in Kabul. And it really, for me, and I think for those directors as well, that ran the night and the day crew, paid dividends for what I learned. But it was just under 13 months by the time I got home from Afghanistan when it started as 3.
Just out of curiosity, because I mean, look, I know the kinetic operations and combat's very different in Afghanistan than it is in Iraq, but what stood out to you as one of the major differences between the two?
Well, obviously, I kind of always had it in my head, and I pretty much confirmed it when I went over to Afghanistan, that with the terrain and the environment, especially everything that happened in 2001, soon after 9/11, with the horse soldiers and so forth. I always followed that mission set and followed it all the way through up until when I showed up over there. So in my head, I always had it for some reason that I think I would like to deploy to Afghanistan over Iraq or over Yemen. And that, I found that to be true. I can't say that I wanted to stay over there for a full 13 months, but ended up being good for me and I think all involved. But the operations were just different. The terrain is obviously way different. The things you have to account for in the fighting season in the winter and so forth. It's just a different environment, different challenge. But combat, like we mentioned earlier, is combat. And anything could go from being perfectly normal and as planned to you go into second and third, fourth contingencies and reacting to whatever happens. So each night I saw something and witnessed something, observed something, and reported on something that was completely different than the night before. And it pretty much happened like that for my time there, whether it be at Sajida Alpha or as headquarters.
So by this time, you've got about 20 years in already.
This is 2017, so.
Oh, okay. Well, you went that far forward, yeah. I mean, by the time you get asked to, if you'd be considered, you're over 20 years. I guess where the question I'm leading to is, any thoughts of retirement at this point? I mean, do you still have more to, you feel like you want to do, or?
Well, my time was pretty much up, and I was eligible to stay on for another 4 years. I was watching the election close in 2016, to be honest with you. So the election happened 2016, and then 2017, I ended up deciding to stay on and do another 4 years at least. And so, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I guess I'm just wondering, was that more of had the election gone the other way, would you have decided to get out?
Not sure. I'm not sure. It was definitely something I was considering. 13 months is just under is a long time to spend in that type of environment.
Yeah.
But I noticed a lot of changes just in my last couple of days there at RS headquarters. Once it didn't take long for a different way of doing business to make it down to that 4-star headquarters, and then soon after, probably at the same time, all the other different units that I was a part of throughout my career. It was just a different way of doing business from a very high leadership position all the way down, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
It was something I was going to give another 4 years for.
Look, I mean, I say it repeatedly, and this isn't necessarily an indictment or insult, but deploying under George W. Bush and then deploying under Obama were two completely different experiences. And that's okay. They're different leaders. They're different presidents. They have different philosophies. That's kind of what America's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be the same guy running or gal running things for 35 consecutive years, despite what Congress has turned into. Different conversation for a different day. But my point is that, yeah, the tenor is different when the president is different. They execute things differently. So that shouldn't surprise anybody. in any size, way, shape, or form. What is ultimately the reason that you do decide to retire officially?
Well, once again, I went to SOC South, so I got a couple more outstanding tours once I got back from Afghanistan. Went to SOC South, learned how a TSOC functioned down in Homestead, Florida. Lived in Miami, great area. Love South Florida.
That must have been a tough assignment, man. That must have sucked.
Yeah, a lot of time down in Chile. I like travel down to South America. Got a lot of close friends still down there to this date, and still people deploying down there on a regular basis. So I stay in tune with current events in general, but to those areas, what's going on in those areas, and so forth. So I did my 2 years at SOC South, and great tour there, a lot of travel, and then I reported back out to Special Boat Team 12. Which turned out to be my last command. That was one of the coastal teams that I brought up earlier, out in Coronado. My family loves Coronado, not necessarily California, but we always lived in California. Had a in Coronado when we did stay out there, and you know, I'm a big fan of Coronado, but California never would probably retire there. That's why we're here in Pensacola as much as we did enjoy our time there. California is just not for us, the way it's set up and so forth. That's just me. But ended up retiring there, and a lot of it was to do with the change in leadership again at the very top. And so there was a number of things that played into when I decided to call it a day, and at this point, 31 years, 1 month, 12 days, it was enough.
You think?
I was up for 05, and there was a lot of weighing my options, but I ended up choosing to get out and do something else.
Well, again, there's nothing to be, at least objectively from the outside, there's nothing to be ashamed of about a 31-year career, regardless of as long as it ends, you know, the right way, which is you deciding to walk out on your own terms, and I think that's special. And look, you know, there's a lot of us, and I deal with it now. You know, within my command, I have to every 2 years. Anybody who's over 20 years gets a review from the Army, and they just decide that people are going to be sent home. You know, they're cutting away the fat, and it's one thing to be able to tell the world, or tell the Navy, tell the Army, hey, here you go. Here's my resignation. I'm done. I'm leaving on my terms. Not, oh, by the way, you're getting kicked out in the end of December because you're considered excess at this point. So I congratulate you for that. And that was the long-winded way of saying congratulations.
Nice. Thank you.
All right. So do you know what you want to do now that you're going to get out of the Navy?
Well, I mean, the transition process, it's probably, I think you can easily say it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
It's what's best for me and my family would be completely different for another family and another service member, probably regardless of where they serve. But I try to help the service members out any way I can. I try to help veterans out any way I can. And it's a passion of mine, and I will likely do this, and regardless of what job I end up doing full time. I will always do my best to find a creative way to do my part in making someone's transition, if I can, better, or making someone's life, or at least things I've learned along the way. A lot of lessons learned. Pass that on to others to where they don't relearn those same lessons. So I could go on and on about that, but if nothing else, regardless of what I do with my full-time job that I'll call it, I will always do what I can to be creative and help veterans and service members and support our military.
So how do you get involved with JUL-TV?
I have a powerful network that I'm proud of on LinkedIn and similar on Facebook, but out of the blue, Tom Julian from JUL-TV, I guess he saw some of what I do via my LinkedIn profile. And sitting watching TV one evening, and he sent me a text and like, hey, would you be interested in doing a television series on helping veterans? And at the time, we didn't have a title for it. And, we came up with one later, but that's how it fell into my lap, so to speak. And I'm thankful for that. It's definitely just another platform to where if everything's done right, set up right, scheduled right, get the right viewing audience, that it could be very good and beneficial for veterans across the board, regardless of what service they're in and what their specialty was within their service. I found that even in small communities like Naval Special Warfare, there's a lot of people that with some of these outstanding nonprofit organizations, for example, that do great things in preparing a veteran for their transition from military service over to the private sector or the civilian workplace, corporate America, whatever people want to refer to it as. It's a process, and how these nonprofits, and there's many of them doing great things, get from A to Z. It's all different, but at the end of the day, they're all very successful in getting the person through their transition from service out into the civilian workplace and doing well, with their family being well taken care of. The veteran now is very happy, and the new employer is happy. That's wins across the board, and there's plenty of room for improvement, but that's always a good thing when you look at it, and that's 3 wins that you can be happy about.
So how does the television series that we spoke about earlier start to come about? You're the executive producer of it. Do you have any experience executive producing a TV show?
Absolutely not,
okay.
But I will have a lot of,
like any good Navy SEAL, you'll just figure it out as we go along.
Yeah, and there will without a doubt be a no kidding executive producer from, that is one of my 4 titles though.
Oh, okay.
From Hollywood, from California to our location where we do the filming, without a doubt will be an executive producer. But the goal behind it is though that 90 to 95%, if not more, is these nonprofits that we're highlighting are going to be the ones that determine what they want the world to see as far as how they do business, what makes them successful. Show briefly where they started, where they're currently at, acknowledge their corporate partners that helped them get from when they started to where they're at now, their sponsors, their donors, their supporters, and so on. So we'll figure out creative ways within our 10-show series on how to highlight all of that. Again, it's completely different on how they get from start to finish and getting that service member ready. But at the end of the day, it's a very good product. And you'll see the analysis and the numbers that a lot of the nonprofits like to highlight as far as showing their success. And then obviously you'll hear it from the service members, veterans, and I'm sure that some of them will get creative and with their famous alumni that they have that they want to show that went through their program, well, then they'll be highlighted as well. But if nothing else, what this series will do is it will get attention on these programs that are available. And it kind of baffles me at sometimes when people just don't know that these programs exist for them. Yeah, in the SOF community, the Spec Ops community as a whole, there's many programs that we have the option in taking advantage of. And then from there, the officers generally all know, not always, but all know about these programs existing, the benefits of attending them, and so forth. And same with the senior enlisted for most part from E9 to E7. But beyond that, there is a lot of gaps and seams that need to be filled as far as getting the word out. Not every program is right for everyone. I mean, it's the person, once they are knowledgeable in these programs existing and where they take place, how they go about their business and preparing them, need to pick the right one for them. But I want to make sure they at least know that they exist, and then from there they can pick the right one for them. And but but it's a wide range of folks that, especially in the support type departments and divisions within soft commands, that don't even know that they exist. And before I would get out, I would just walk around, and especially after I had already got a billet, I went to the Honor Foundation program, outstanding program, learned a ton. It's a 3-month program. We met 2 days a week. And during COVID, it was virtual via Zoom. So I learned a ton about it, and very thankful that I had the opportunity to attend. But there's many other orgs that are similar, that do great things, just do them a little bit different. But when I had my billet and when I finished, I would walk around to, even in our small community, to the support divisions and departments, and I'd just talk to people. They'd tell me that they're getting out in a couple months, trying to figure out what they're doing. And I'd ask them, are you going to attend the Honor Foundation or a similar program? And they look at me like I'm crazy, you know? And I'm like, you haven't heard of that? And sure enough, a lot of times they haven't. And then, but that's happening in a lot of different branches, especially the non-SOF communities, to where it's hit or miss, and whether you've even heard they exist. So we're going to get that word out, and I'm set on it, and I'll find other creative ways to also get the word out. At some point, we're going to increase our marketing platform and all of the info that we send out. But we're expecting to shoot late summer. It's looking more like early fall. And then at some point in the fall, after we get everybody's schedules from all of the participating nonprofits, I'll be able to put the 10-week series together, run it by Tom Julian for approval, and then we'll go from there. But
I mean, that's incredible, just because it's, like you said, it's amazing with how many veterans service organizations there are out there, and how little veterans know that they actually exist. Right? Like you have to find somebody else who went through the program there to actually, understand what it does and what the benefits are, and it's everything else. And you just sit there and your jaw's on the floor and say, yeah, this is great. They do this, and this. And you're like, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that just don't know, and we're going to fix that. But like in our community, and we do a good job, especially with outstanding organizations like our Navy SEAL Foundation or UDT SEAL or SEAL Family Foundation. I could go on and on about how our community, and they definitely get the word out. It just doesn't trickle down to all the locations that it needs to, and all the different personnel that it needs to. But we will fix that. And then I mentioned earlier that veterans in transition, it's a broad term. And we came up with that and designed it that for a reason. We already covered a service member getting out, whether they did 5 years or 40 years, going through that process. But veterans in transition also applies to our service members that in some cases have been in combat or in combat type environments ever since 9/11 happened. And some are still to this date going on regular rotations in and out of combat zones.
Yeah.
So in some cases, people come back, regardless of service, especially when they've been to Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria, Somalia, you name it. They come back, and then some people just need additional assistance in some way or another. So a service member that comes back that needs to be paired up with a dog, or a service animal, that these nonprofits in this arena or this realm, they do super things. So we're going to highlight them as well. And in some cases, they come back and pairing our operators up with horses does wonderful things, and the data supports it. Not everybody needs a service dog. So highlight these nonprofits that work in this area. Some do fly fishing and gets them back into the environment. Some do surf therapy. Some take their veterans diving and put them in the undersea environment, nice warm water, not cold water, and to where they can really enjoy their time and see the undersea realm. So veterans in transition, it's very broad. A lot of different nonprofits doing super work, regardless of whether they get service members prepared for the civilian industry, or they're just needing some type of additional assistance before they transition back into the community, back to their families in some cases. There's just a lot of work in that area. And then you have all the different special meds, the CBD, and there's a number of things. And then obviously that's not inclusive within the medical area or field, all the things that is being done to help our service members that need that type of assistance getting it. So veterans in transition is very broad, and we're going to cover a number of things that'll be entertaining. I have very few left and right limits. I got to keep it family friendly, and we got to keep it entertaining once we get our audience, build it, and then that way after the 10-week series this fall, we'll have another one lined up and so on. So much
all
more
right.
fun.
Before we let you go, I do have to ask about Warriors and whiskey. So what exactly is the proper corn to mass ratio for the best whiskey out there?
Well, you're asking the wrong expert on whiskey.
You're an expert on drinking it, right?
You can say I'm an expert on whiskey with that, because I'm a bourbon fan.
So
but
am I.
I also enjoy my scotch
Yes, same.
as well, the single malt especially. But to each their own. Some people like it on the rocks, some people like it neat, and some people like it with water. Everybody has a different opinion. But for me, I like bourbon. Colonel Taylor is one of my personal favorites, and then but everybody's different. But Warriors and Whiskey, I'm an ambassador in the Pensacola, Florida area for Warriors and Whiskey. And at the end of the day, there's 3 clubs. You got Warriors and Whiskey Club, you got Veterans Whiskey Club, and then you have Veterans Cigar Club. Well, the 2 Veterans clubs, that the name says it all. You need to be either an active duty service member or a veteran to join those clubs. But the Warriors and Whiskey Club, and you can find each of the groups on Facebook, and the same with LinkedIn and Instagram as well. But Warriors and Whiskey, that includes service members, that includes veterans, first responders, families of veterans, families of first responders. So basically, anybody that wishes to join the Warriors and Whiskey Club, you go to one of those groups, you sign up. I have some business cards that I can send out via support. But they're easy to find, they're easy to sign up for. And the whole intent, or the main intent behind the whiskey clubs and the veterans clubs in general, is bring our service members after they get out, they become a veteran, they move out to all areas of the country, and they lose contact in a lot of cases with their teammates, with their friends that they serve with.
Sure.
Their combat buddies, their swim buddies, and so forth. So in all of these different cities and states across the U.S., it's just another way to bring people together, bring the families together. And whether you want to talk about over bourbon, over beer, it don't have to be at a whiskey club. It can be at a brewery. It can be at a beer club. But bring people together, have the families there, have a good plan for getting home, because it does involve drinking one way or another. So bring them together. You can share sea stories, you can share combat stories, funny stories, whatever. But once you're together, then it's all on the group and so forth to discuss and talk about whatever they want to for that 3-hour, 4-hour period, wherever your venue may be. But we're growing. There's like 58 of us the last time I looked as far as ambassadors. It's growing every week, and but it's up well over 20,000 for the members in the Warriors and Whiskey Club. We need to grow that. And at the end of the day, we're constantly looking and in the process of adding nonprofits to where a lot of the proceeds, like Canines for Warriors, for example, with Warriors and Whiskey, a lot of the proceeds go to Canines for Warriors when we hold events and regardless of the type of events. So getting creative. We're always looking for creative ways to help out the nonprofits, bring people together, and those 3 clubs do a great job at it. They're growing across the nation, but we need to grow them quicker.
Well, if you're looking for an ambassador in the Atlanta area, I'm volunteering just for the booze.
I got it. We'll be in comms pretty soon.
So I just anything for a good glass of brown liquor. That's really, I mean, it's that and a cigar puts a nice little punctuation on the end of a day, to say the least. So, and finally, what else are you doing other than the TV stuff and this? I mean, is there anything else you have left, or is retirement life treating you good otherwise?
Well, I mean, it's kind of dynamic and a lot of good things. There's a lot of work in setting up the JUL-TV series, for example, and there's no staff. Once the show starts airing, get a good following, then obviously that will be very rewarding at some point. But in the process of setting everything up, getting all the schedules. Until that happens, there's the work is up front, and the good that will come of it from helping the vets and everything else is on the back end. So security work, I help out other I try to in the business world, and we have coastal waste services, for example, to where I'm a contractor or consultant that works with them. It's a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, former Apache pilot, did some great things over in Afghanistan, runs the business along with his co-partner and just doing super things. So I try to help out in that area and so forth whenever I can. So I have my hands in a number of different things, and to include the security realm, and But the majority of my time and effort right now goes with those two programs, Warriors and Whiskey. Definitely the JUL-TV series, and getting all the dates back for we can start our filming, and that's going to be at areas all over the U.S. Basically, we will go to the nonprofits at the events that they want to showcase. So that's going to be all over the place. One of my roles is sponsor development with JUL-TV. So in working with the corporate partners and the sponsors, and the donors and supporters of each of the nonprofit, and they're all different. I will possibly be reaching out to them, seeing if they could that we could cover all the advertising costs and have a title sponsor. That's still a work in process or progress. So much more to follow on that end. Once our marketing campaign goes a little bit more steam.
Well, like any good Navy SEAL, the only easy day was yesterday, right? And no rest for the weary. So I assume that mantra will stay with you, even though you're out of uniform now, as you go forward.
Absolutely. So my days are accounted for. Always trying to find creative ways to help others when I can, and that makes me feel better, and nothing else.
All right. Well, again, it is called Veterans in Transition from JUL-TV, JUL-TV. Look forward to this series this fall. People can connect with you, as you mentioned, on LinkedIn if they want to do so there. And Warriors and Whiskey, wherever you are across the United States, sign up and connect with fellow veterans or service members across the board. Tim, 30-plus years is absolutely nothing to shake a stick at, right? I mean, it is not easy to stay in any job for that long, particularly the military, given all that they've asked of you, your family, and those around you, to the sacrifices that you've made. So a humble thanks for those many years of service, and certainly your candor in sharing them with us and everything that you have going on. I'm looking forward to seeing the television series, and certainly glad that we got a chance to connect. And just as always, man, wishing you nothing but the best.
Hey, thank you, and I appreciate you giving me this platform. I appreciate you having me on. Hope everyone has a good day, and cheers.
Jim Fedrick, thanks for being a part of the Hazard Ground.
You've been listening to Kill Cliff's Hazard Ground podcast, hosted by Mark Zeno. If you have an interesting story to tell and you'd like to be on the show, send us an email at producer@hazardground.com. And if you like the show, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.